high tour. Doing a
This is Matt and Kim with I Hike Around. First hike we're going to review is Tor Mountain. Tor Mountain State Park is where we went.
high tour state park.
Okay, this was actually a really fun hike for us. Location is just north of the Tappan Zee Bridge on the western side of the Hudson. And when we first got there, if I recall,
Turn up the hill, an acute angle up the hill. So look out for that.
okay, accessibility I would say is really poor. At the actual place where the trailhead starts, there's a small little pullover that could accommodate maybe 3 or 4 cars,
Three
and that's
cars
it.
max.
So
Yeah.
parking, I would say, is poor for this particular hike. But there is a caveat. You could start at High Tor State Park, and there's facilities there, but it's not really part of the trailhead. You'd have to go off the trailhead, and you would actually come in from the east to the High Tor Mountain. So that's just a little thing to think about with this hike. There was, yeah. There was no entrance fee at all, so this is a free hike for you. And for those people that are looking out west saying, what? There's actually, it's kind of like some, like state parks do have fees, just like national parks, so this would be a free hike. Difficulty?
It's very easy.
Yeah, this is an easy hike.
For someone who hikes regularly, it's pretty easy. But for beginners, it's a good hike.
Yes, and
It's a good introduction.
it's an excellent introduction hike. For those people that
Yeah.
are relatively new to hiking, this would be perfect for you.
Not too strenuous, but it still has some uphill that will give you a good idea of what to expect in other advanced hikes.
Yes, this is relatively, in terms of elevation, I think it was only 800 feet. So very, very easy. Yet you still had some places where you did encounter some steep terrain, which was fun.
It was like 1,700 feet.
That was probably the elevation. No, 800 feet.
It was more than that.
Okay, we'll beg to differ. We'll go back to and we'll annotate. Ideal time of year for this hike, I would probably say spring or fall.
Spring or fall.
You don't want to go during the dead heat of summer. It is, you're gonna burn up on the trail.
Because there's a lot of exposure on the top of the high Tor peak, so it would be better if you don't go when it's that
And
intense.
you probably would not have done this
We almost died.
any later than we did because of the heat. Nor do you want to do this in the dead of winter. You'd have to. There are some parts you would need crampons, and
Especially there's some rocks there that might make it tricky in winter.
yes. So I would probably avoid this if there are any real snow cover. The scenery itself was.
It was pretty.
Yeah, it was nice. You're walking through temperate forest through most of the hikes, and then you come across some rock outcroppings which started to make it look interesting. And then when you went to the I guess the last part of the Tor Mountain, the high part, you had excellent scenes all the way looking through the New York skyline, Hudson
A
River.
360-degree panorama. Anywhere you look, you can see something.
It was nice. It was at the top of the mountain. Was pretty
There
nice.
was a little town at the overlooking the edge of the cliff. Is
Yeah,
a
it was
cliff?
actually a cliff, a dead drop of probably about 500 feet.
It was more than 500.
Wilderness factor, I would say, very non-existent here. Even though you could encounter the, odd deer
We came across a snake.
or bear, but
What about a snake?
we'll show in the snake. The snake was the
snake
highlight.
was evil.
It was a small little garter snake, so
It was big.
it wasn't really that bad at all. But I'd say wilderness is really not too much on this particular hike. The wilderness factor, I would say, is very little, low. You started off with power lines, so the power lines first took off. As soon as you took off on the hike off of a road with cars passing, then you ran right into power lines. And then as you were going through, you saw people's backyards, and all throughout the hike there were planes flying overhead. So you did not feel like you were in
a jungle.
You did not feel like you were in a desert or a jungle. And then when you got to the top, you had a view.
Huge city with the nuclear plants in the distance.
Yeah, so there wasn't much of a wilderness factor with this.
And graffiti on the top of the rocks.
Yes, this is New York.
No wilderness.
Not on this particular hike. Definitely not.
But there were trees.
Yes, it was still a nice hike. The trail conditions and the terrain were pretty good. You had some rock outcroppings here and there. You were actually walking on some rock face. The trails were good.
Yeah,
and they were marked off.
Beginner.
Not bad at all.
You can use your hiking poles on this trip.
Yes, Kimmy and I did use the hiking poles, and they did not get in the way, and they were useful.
Yeah.
People on the trail, we actually encountered none.
Very little.
Maybe one or two.
Maybe two groups.
If that.
2 groups of like 2 people for the most.
Yes, and they were nice, and it was pleasant. But I don't think this particular hike is a lot of people going on this particular mountain.
Well, it depends, because maybe they didn't go because it was hot that day, but it is said that it is popular, so look out for that. On the weekdays, it's said to be less popular, so if you want, you can check the weekdays.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say also in off-season conditions, you might get a little bit more of a wilderness experience, but don't expect too much, because you are surrounded by small towns, even when you're at the top of the mountain, as you will see in the video.
And power plants.
Yeah, and nuclear power plants. Distance, this was about a 4-mile hike, completed in its entirety.
Right.
You could make it longer if you want. There were a few off things that you could have done. And we did it in about 4 hours.
Right, like average time would be about 3 hours, I think, but
yeah, I would say
we're
that.
slow because we stop and we take pictures.
And video, and we still, even if we didn't do that, we'd still
and run from snakes.
Take a long time to hike. We just enjoy the hike itself. Alright, so that was Tor Mountain. We will put in... Okay, that was Tor Mountain, and Matt and Kin signing off. I hike around.